Japan, Malaysia, and Singapore. But the Chinese have warned of resolute and serious consequences if Pelosi stops in the Taiwanese territory. Joining us now to discuss is CNN political analyst and Washington Post columnist Josh Rogin. Josh, always appreciate you being up bright and early for us. So resolute and forceful measures if Pelosi lands in Taiwan. What exactly does that mean?
Well, Boris, nobody knows what that means, and it's intentionally vague because the Chinese government is threatening a crisis, but they're not exactly threatening what that crisis would be. So they have a range of options. They could do something provocative dealing with Pelosi's plane, which is carrying a bunch of congressmen. They could punish Taiwan by, making some sort of military aggression in the direction of that island, or they could have a range of economic and military responses that are pointed either at the United States or Taiwan, or both. Or they could do nothing, or it could be just fine. And I think we're going to find out pretty soon. Nancy Pelosi and her delegation were in Hawaii on Saturday. They met with military leaders there. Then they left, their plane left, and they're on the way to Asia. And within a few hours, we'll know whether or not they're headed to Singapore for her first stop or Taiwan. And if they are headed to Singapore, then they could be in Taiwan in a couple of days.
So something interesting about this was that President Biden let slip that the U.S. military does not think a visit by Pelosi to Taiwan is a good idea. That exposure of a rift between the U.S. military and the sitting Speaker of the House of Representatives, how does that play into all of this?
Right. Well, President Biden was right in the sense that there are some concerns in the military. But the truth of the matter, Boris, is that the opposition to Speaker Pelosi's potential trip to Taiwan is White House driven. And for several weeks, there's been an effort led by National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan, including some military leaders and some other leaders, to convince her not to go because they don't want a crisis right now, because they've got their hands full and because they don't know what the Chinese government is going to do. The Biden administration is in the process of trying to tamp down tensions in U.S.-China relations, not ramp them up. And the funny, ironic thing is that the Chinese government doesn't believe that the president of the United States can't control the Speaker of the House. They don't understand. In their system, when the president says to do something, you do it, or you die or go to jail. So they don't believe us when we say, no, we've got a system where the Speaker of the House can go to Taiwan whenever she wants. There's nothing the White House can do to stop it, but that's actually the case. So for the Biden people, it's a worst case scenario because when the president blurted it out, he confirmed the trip, which was supposed to be secret, and it actually puts Pelosi in a corner where she feels like she has to go because now if she backs down, everyone will know that she backed down. So the soup that the White House is in is of their own recipe.
It is one of the beautiful things about being in a free society. People can come and go as they please of their own volition, right? The military also believes, as has been reported recently, that the timeline for some kind of military action by China in Taiwan has shortened. There was a belief that it was still years away. I've seen some estimates now that has it within the next 18 months. Does that coincide with what you're hearing?
It seems that the Chinese government is putting various pieces in place to give themselves the capability to invade Taiwan and take over the island by force. It also seems that they're not there yet. I would put it more at 3 to 4 years by the time they have enough landing ships, missiles, and nuclear deterrent to invade Taiwan in such a way that we wouldn't be able to do anything about it. They're definitely building that capability now. They're looking at Ukraine. They're not going to make the same mistakes that Putin made. That means overwhelming force, and they don't have it quite yet. But President Xi Jinping has been very clear. He plans to reunify Taiwan by any means possible, and he's setting himself up to do that. And if we care about the safety and security of Taiwan and free and democratic societies, we ought to be helping them to prepare for that. We ought to be doing that right now.
Josh, I'm glad you mentioned Vladimir Putin and the situation in Ukraine, because you have a new op-ed out in the Post where you describe a bipartisan group of lawmakers in the United States alongside Ukrainian leaders that are seeking to install more U.S. military officials in a non-combat capacity in Ukraine to help the Ukrainians. I guess my thought is, doesn't that lead to a degree of mission creep where the United States has to invest more and more to help Ukraine win and maintain territory?
Yes, there's no doubt about it. It is a bunch of U.S. lawmakers and President Zelensky calling for a little bit of mission creep. But their rationale is pretty clear that we're sending $40 billion worth of aid and weapons into Ukraine. We don't know where it's going, and it would be really helpful both for the oversight mission, but also for the Ukrainians, if we had some people in the embassy, for example, working with the Ukrainians to figure it all out and watch it and do logistics and operations and all of that stuff that makes that whole huge program work better. The Russians are escalating, and there's a war in the south, and winter is coming, and when it freezes over, those battle lines will be hard to undo. So we have a period of time, and by we I mean the countries that care about helping Ukraine save its country, to surge weapons there and to help them use those weapons to take back as much territory as possible. But that window is closing fast, and it's not just Russia that's looking at our actions here; it's also China, and they are related. And if we let Ukraine be carved up and diced up into a country that's not really a functioning country, well, that bodes disaster both for Ukraine and for Taiwan and for the free world as it stands.
Yeah, there is a lot going on in the world. Josh Rogin, we appreciate you walking us through all of that.
Anytime.
Of course. Stay with CNN. We'll be right back.